Hello, hello. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Not Just Nintendo, the video game podcast that is about Nintendo. But it's not just Nintendo here at Not Just Nintendo, as I talk about other video games and other video game companies as well. In fact, this episode, I'll mostly be talking about other video game companies, because today is the recap of the Game Awards 2025 show. Before that, though, I want to talk about some, things here and there that I've played or other things going on just in general, as we wind down the year. And then, of course, I will get into the Game Awards. Don't you even worry about it. I guess for a quick collection update, I don't think I've updated you in a little bit of a while. A little bit of a while, that is not English. So I did the other day, because I got a very good deal on the three of them. I bought Mario and Sonic at the 2012 London Olympic Games on the Wii. And I also bought Red Steel and Red Steel 2. So I now have 67 Wii games. So the Wii collection has gotten quite large. Obviously, it's very large. It's my second largest collection. My largest collection is the NES, or not NES, sorry, the Atari 2600. And then the Wii is my second largest collection. So that's where we're at with the collection. I got the three of them for $20, so it was quite cheap. That's the main reason I bought it. I'm not sure if I told you guys a while back when I bought Uncharted 4 on PS4, and then also the other two Mario and Sonic games on the Wii. So there's Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games from 2008, and then Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Winter Games, or Winter Olympic, whatever it is. That was from 2010, and now we have the 2012 one as well. So I have all of the Mario and Sonic games on the Wii. Of course, there were also a handful on the DS. There might have been one on the 3DS. There was one on the Wii U. And then, or maybe two on the Wii U, actually, and then one on the Switch, obviously. Anyways, so that's kind of where we're at on the collection. I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of an update here. I don't think I mentioned, today is episode 36. 36, I don't think there's really anything too special about the number 36. I guess 36 is kind of a cool number, right? Like I really like 36. I'm not entirely sure why. It might be because 3 is half of 6, right? So it's like 3, 6. It almost feels like then there should be a 12. Or you could say 3, 6, 9, right? Because it's like, you're counting by threes. I don't know. I feel like something's almost missing there when you say 36. But if 36 really stands out to me for some reason, it seems like a pretty important number, and I'm not entirely sure why that is. So it's a perfect square, right? So 6 squared is 36. Maybe that's also why. But anyways, I'm sure there's got to be something to it, but 36 seems like a cool number. I don't know if you guys like 36. I will say 37, not quite so great. So we'll be in for some trouble next week. Now, I guess to update you guys on the show, today is obviously December 16th. That means next episode should come out on the 23rd of December, so that'll come out right before Christmas, just 2 days before Christmas. I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to be talking about on the 23rd. I don't feel like I'm going to have a whole lot to talk about, so we'll see what happens on that. I guess I'll have to figure that out, right? I might do like a little bit of like a recap of all the stuff I did this year, all the games I played, everything like that. That might be what I do on the 23rd. Then the next episode should be on December 30th. And then after that, it would be January 6th. However, I'm going to be gone. I'm going to be out of town for the 30th. And I figure if I'm going to do my end of year recap anyway, then I might as well do that on the 23rd and then miss the 30th. Not have an episode out on the 30th. And then come back on January 6th with predictions for the year. And that'll be how we start out the new year. So that's my plan. So here's what's going on with the channel and the podcast. The plan is, so today, right, this episode came out today. This is December 16th. Friday, which is the 19th, I'm still planning to put out my ranking of every game I played in 2025. So there's 40 games that I'm going to talk about, 40 to number 1. I'm going to hopefully that video is not much more than like 45 minutes or something. I'm trying to keep it pretty short. So that's going to come out on the 19th. Then we'll have the podcast episode again on the 23rd. We'll see what happens. I was hoping to try to get another video out on the 26th yet. I'm not entirely sure what that video will be. I was thinking of maybe doing a top 10, which obviously will be the same list as the one from the Every Game Ranked, but for each of the 10 games in the top 10, I'll have a lot more to say about them. I'll give more thoughts, more in-depth thoughts, and I'll spend more time on each one because, of course, then I'll have more time because it'll be its own standalone video. So that's my plan. We'll see what happens with that. And also, I think the top 10 will be a little bit less daunting. There's definitely people that are not going to watch the end of year ranking because it's long, right? And it doesn't seem very appealing. If I do a top 10, it's suddenly more appealing and it's probably shorter as well. So I think that'll probably work out a little bit better if I do that. So that's my plan. That'll be on the 26th if that happens. Then we'll skip December 30th. There'll be no podcast episode on December 30th, and we'll come back on January 6th if all goes well. And that'll be episode, I guess, 38 at that point. And that'll be my 2026 predictions for Nintendo and the video game industry and all that stuff. And we'll see what else I get to on January 6th. I might also talk about some games. We'll see what happens. I'm sure between January 6th and January 13th, I'm going to talk a lot about games I've played and stuff over the holidays. I imagine I'll do quite a bit of video gaming over the holidays, even though I'll be out of town. On the go, I'll be able to play a lot of stuff, at least on the Switch too. I don't know so much about on the PS5 and stuff. We'll see what happens, but definitely on the Switch 2 and on the 3DS, I'll probably get to play a lot of stuff. So that's my plan. And I should also mention, I don't know if I said this, the end of year ranking, that will also go out in the podcast feed. So on YouTube, I'll add the video to the podcast playlist. So it'll be there for people listening to the show. But I'll also go and put up an audio version, like I did for the top 50 video, which, by the way, as of recording this, as a side note, as of recording this, my top 50 video has 499 views. So that video has ended up being crazy popular. Back in July, after it came out, it had like 100, and it kind of slowly climbed up to like 200 or so in October, and now it's just catapulted all the way up to 500 views. I don't generally like to talk about view counts and stuff, but I've got to say, thanks all for the support on that video. I mean, I was honestly blown away at how many people have been watching that lately. I did not expect that to be sort of an evergreen video that people will be watching forever. And that definitely encourages me to make more videos, rankings and stuff like that in the future. So thanks all for those who watched that, and anybody who might be new to the channel. As a result, that was incredible, and it's technically not my most viewed video. It's technically second, but the number one is a video I made years and years ago. It's not any good, so for all intents and purposes, that's my most popular and best video. So definitely would recommend that if you've not already watched that. So anyways, that's going to be all I'll say on that. So let's talk a little bit about games I've been playing. I've not done a ton of stuff because obviously, we're nearing the end of the year. I've got stuff to do, right? I'm pretty busy with this video. I also did a couple live streams, finally. I know I finally did some live streams the other day. I live streamed the Game Awards on Thursday night. It was a 4.5 hour live stream. It was fun. It was great. I had people there, and it was fun. It was awesome, and I'm glad I could share my real-time thoughts on the Game Awards. I was kind of hoping maybe to do some sort of recap of the Game Awards, but I'm not entirely sure. I don't think it's going to fit into my schedule, to be honest. So if I do, it'll probably be sometime in January, but that might be a little bit too far off. I might just decide not to do it because it'll kind of lose a lot of its relevance. So we'll see what happens on that. And then I also streamed just some Mario 64, and I wanted to do some sort of stream on Friday night there. I just wanted to do something because it'd been a little while since I'd streamed games, and so I was just, itching to do something, and I figured Mario 64 was a good thing. So at some point I'll do another stream, at least one more. We'll see, maybe two more, I don't know. Probably just one more, though, for Mario 64 and finish that up, and then we'll see after that. If you've got any ideas, if you're somebody who watches the channel regularly, that also listens to the podcast, if you've got any great ideas as to what I should live stream, feel free to leave them below. There's actually, if you join the Discord server, we have a nice community over there. There's lots of stuff, lots of conversations that are open, lots of different things. Over there, you can actually leave stream suggestions and video suggestions. There's 2 different channels for those, so feel free to join that and give me some suggestions over there. That would be great. So, like I said before, with the year wrapping up, I was busy and I didn't want to really start a ton of games. And then I kind of started a ton of games anyways. I shouldn't say a ton of games, but I've got a few things that I've started here just recently. I guess before we get into that, though, I'll talk about something that I was talking about a little bit last week. And that game is Gunman Clive. So I was making my top 40, or I say top 50. It's not my top 50, though. It's my every game ranked, which happens to be 40 games. So I guess in a way it's kind of a top 40. I was looking through my list of 40 games, and I had counted The Last of Us Left Behind, which is sort of an expansion, sort of its own standalone thing that's tied into the original Last of Us game. I was looking through my list, and I had counted that separately because I thought that would get me to 40 games for the end of the year. Well, as I was looking through, I realized that no, in fact, that only left me with 39 games. And I was like, oh no, this can't do. So quickly, even though I'd already cut it off, I was like, you know what? I'm going to reopen it. I'm going to go play one game. And I was already like halfway through Gunman Clive. And so I figured, you know what? I'm going to go back to Gunman Clive. Last week, I talked about a level that's about halfway through the game where they introduced this new mechanic. It's where you jump on mushrooms. And for those that do not know about Gunman Clive or weren't here last week, that didn't listen to the episode last week, Gunman Clive, it's basically a Mega Man game, but it's like set in like an Old West scene. It was a old 3DS game. It's an indie game. It's from the same people that made like Mechtermination Force. That same guy. So, anyways, Gunman Clive was cool, right? I was enjoying Gunman Clive. It was kind of difficult. It wasn't like super difficult or anything. It was a little tough at some points. But the good news is, you can jump right back into the action pretty quickly. There's no checkpoints or anything, but none of the levels were like so hard that it was a huge issue. And I think that's kind of part of the challenge is being able to get through all of the levels. So I was enjoying Gunman Clive until I got up to that one level in the second half with the mushrooms. And basically there are these mushrooms where the idea is, this is pretty predictable, you've got to jump on the mushrooms to gain more height. So you come up on there's a wall, there's a cliff, right? And there's a mushroom at the bottom. You got to jump off the mushroom to get up on top of the cliff. Sounds pretty simple. You do this in a lot of games. But for some reason, the mechanics for the Gunman Clive mushrooms just kind of suck. They're really bad. Like, it's really terribly programmed. I don't know what they were thinking with that, but the timing for the mushroom jumps makes absolutely no sense. So I was struggling with that. I would try it over and over and over again, and eventually, like 20th try or something, I would get over the wall. But then, immediately, the next obstacle is a mushroom kind of floating in the air, and then two platforms on either side. And so when you jump onto the mushroom, you lose your momentum. So if you don't, commit and jump straight onto the mushroom and try to get right up onto the next platform, you're going to die. You can't just land on the mushroom and then try to line up the jump because it won't work. You won't have enough distance. And so I was struggling. I spent probably half an hour or something just troubleshooting this mushroom issue. Finally, when I came back just this week, I was actually able to figure out the mushroom timing this time. Like I said, though, it is not well designed. The mushroom timing, it's really weird. You have to, kind of hit the button for jumping after Clive jumps off the mushroom. So you'll be bouncing on the mushroom, and on the way up, right? It's like after the model for Clive has already left the mushroom. That's when you have to hit A to get the jump successfully. So you would think it would be pretty much when the mushroom is at its lowest point, right? So, Clive jumps down, he squishes the mushroom. You would think that you would have to jump right then to get the max height from the mushroom. Instead, for whatever reason, it waits until the mushroom springs back up, and Gunman Clive actually starts to leave the mushroom. Like, there's a few pixels now between Clive and the mushroom. That's when you have to hit the button. So the timing is, honestly, it's messed up. I don't know what they were thinking. So that was kind of an issue that was plaguing me. I did eventually figure out the timing, and I was able to do the mushroom jump kind of reliably, like every other time or something. So obviously, those odds were much better, and so eventually I did manage to beat the level, and thankfully, none of the levels after that gave me any troubles. It was just that one weird mechanical thing. Gunman Clive, if it weren't for that one problem, would be awesome. Now it's pretty good, right? That thing did irritate me quite a bit. Overall, I think it's a pretty solid game. I'm not going to spoil where I put it on my list, but I will say it's not super low, it's not super high either, it's kind of in the middle of the road. It's a pretty decent game. I'm happy I played it. I'm definitely excited to play the second Gunman Clive game. I'll definitely get around to that next year, probably in January. Honestly, maybe even in December, maybe in the last couple of days or whatever. We'll see what happens on that, but I could see probably not, probably January. That's what I'm gonna say. I'm probably gonna beat Gunman Clive 2 in January. So we'll see what happens on that, but yeah, I'm definitely excited to play that. I know Gunman Clive 2 is a little bit longer. I beat this one. I finished it up on December 10th. In about an hour. So it was, it didn't take very long. Gunman Clive 2 is supposed to be about double the length, so I would imagine somewhere in the 2-hour area for that one, which is cool. It doesn't usually bother me too much, the length of things. Obviously, a lot of the reason why I played Gunman Clive when I did was because I needed something quick and it was short, so that was definitely a factor in why I played it this year. But it's not the only factor. I also just wanted to play it, right? It's also on my favorite video game podcast, so the one I listen to is called This Nintendo Life. They're two British guys that do it. Go check that out. It's a really awesome podcast. But anyways, that's a game that they really like over there is Gunman Clive. They're big fans over there. They used to talk about it all the time back when it was new. And so it was definitely one that I wanted to play. It was originally a 3DS game as well, so that was kind of special to me. You can't buy it on 3DS anymore, obviously, because the eShop is shut down. It didn't ever come out physically, as far as I know. But it's still kind of cool, right? So, anyways, but it is on Steam, so you can buy it. You can buy it on Steam now. It's only a couple of dollars or something. It's not expensive. So, anyways, Gunman Clive. It was a pretty solid game. I'm glad I played it. It's on my list. That's that. As far as other things that I started, there's going to be a couple of things that I actually carry with me into the next year. So games that I'm in the process of, we've got Uncharted. I'm about 3 hours into that. How Long to Beat says Uncharted, the first one, is about 8 hours long. However, I had played the first half or so of the game before, and so I'm pretty sure that I got through the first half pretty quickly this time. So I could see it being more like 6 or 7 hours. I think I'm about halfway through the stuff in the game. Now, whether, the back half of the game ends up taking me longer, that's, to be determined. But as far as the actual content in the game, I think I'm about halfway through. So that I'll be taking into next year. I'll probably try to finish that up pretty early next year, sometime January, maybe February. I don't want to keep that for too long. Other stuff I'm taking into next year, we've got Final Fantasy III, which I was not planning on taking into next year. I was actually planning on finishing it for this year and having it be my 40th game, but I had a lot more left of it than I thought, and it's really hard to get back into an RPG like that after you've not played it for a while. So I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to do. I'm going to, next year, at some point next year, probably, again, in January at some point, I'm going to try to figure out where I was in the game by watching like a Let's Play on YouTube and trying to see like, okay, what have I seen? And then I get to the point like, oh, this is new, right? So then I can kind of pinpoint where I am and try to figure out where I'm supposed to go. And hopefully I'm not like too kind of rusty on the mechanics to just kind of pick up where I left off. The good news is there's a few chapters left or something before the final boss, so I'm hoping that I can get there and not have to grind too much, but it is also an early Final Fantasy game, so that's kind of just what you signed up for, right? So at some point next year, I want to play Final Fantasy III. Honestly, at some point next year, I would like to get at least through Final Fantasy VI. I really want to play Final Fantasy VI next year because I need a #1 game of the year, right? And I feel like Final Fantasy VI will quite possibly end up being one of my favorite games of all time. So I'm definitely excited to get there, but I want to play all the Final Fantasy games anyway, particularly the first 6. So I figure I might as well play them in order because, that just kind of makes the most sense. So if I'm going to play 6, might as well play 3, 4, 5 beforehand. And I'm definitely excited to get to 4 and 5 as well. There's a lot of people that like those games. I know 3 can be a little bit divisive. So far, there were some aspects I liked and some aspects I didn't. We'll see what happens on that, though. So I may end up having to restart Final Fantasy III sometime next year. If that's what happens, then I'll probably not get around to it for a month or two because I want to kind of, not really be sick of it or anything. So we'll see. I am also technically partway through Tears of the Kingdom and Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga because those are things that I'm doing for a video Let's Play or for live streaming. So those I'm going to carry with me to the next year because those are for video stuff. I'm also half an hour into Severed, which is an indie game on the Switch. Well, I'm playing it on the Switch. It's on a couple places, but I'm playing it on Switch. And Severed is interesting. It's like basically a dungeon crawler, but the main combat mechanic is through the touchscreen on the Switch. That's why it's not on other consoles and stuff. You actually have to swipe on the screen to attack enemies. And it works decently well. The problem was I just wasn't really a huge fan of the level design and of like this all the story stuff around it. Like I just wasn't really hooked at all by Severed from the little bit I played. So I'll probably go back to it at some point. We'll see what happens. I'm also technically partway through Pokemon Legends Arceus, but that game is really long and I don't have a ton of motivation to play it right now. So I may end up finishing it, but if I do, it'll probably be, at some point next year. And then the other two things that I'm carrying into next year are things that I started over the last week. So the first of those is Mega Man. This is the first Mega Man game on the NES. So I bought the Humble Bundle that included some Ace Attorney games and some Mega Man collections sometime a few months ago. And one of them was obviously the first Mega Man Legacy Collection, which includes 1 through 6 of the original Mega Man series, all of which I believe came out in the NES. I'm not actually entirely sure about Mega Man 6. Let me check real quick. That might have actually been a Super Nintendo game. I almost feel like it might have been. But either way, that's the original series of Mega Man games that everybody knows about. Okay, no, that is also NES. So all of the 6 originally were NES games. And then 7 was the one that came out on Super Nintendo. 8 was the one that, I guess that must have been the one that was on Saturn and PlayStation. And then Mega Man 9 was the one that was on WiiWare and Xbox 360 arcade and stuff. I think that was 10 as well. And then 11 was put out like in recent years, like 2018 or something. So that's kind of the breakdown of the mainline Mega Man series. There's also like the Mega Man X games, there's all that stuff. There's a lot of Mega Man games. Obviously, he's been around a long time. There's also the Mega Man games on Game Boy. The first one is called Wily's Revenge. I played that last year, and it ranked very low on my list. I was really not a big fan of it. I found it to be archaic and just not fun. Honestly, it was frustrating on many levels. I'm not sure if I didn't like it because I hadn't played the other Mega Man games first, and it was lower quality, but I had to play the other ones to appreciate it, or if it's honestly just terrible. I'm not entirely sure. So at some point, I'd like to revisit that game, but I figured, it's a better idea to go back to the original series because that's kind of a good way to start with the Mega Man games because they're the most simplistic of all of them, right? So if I play through the original series, then maybe at some point I can go on to like the Mega Man X games and all this stuff. And maybe those, I'll like even more. Obviously, a lot of people have high regards for Mega Man 2. Obviously, that's very well loved. Mega Man 3 has a lot of supporters too, and Mega Man 6 has a lot of supporters. So, obviously everybody has different opinions, but I started playing the first Mega Man game. Basically, for those who don't know, Mega Man, obviously, it's a platformer with you have an arm cannon, so you can attack enemies that way. The idea behind Mega Man games is you'll fight a boss at the end of each level, and each level is pretty long in its own right. It's kind of its own sort of gauntlet, and there's a lot of enemies around, and it can be pretty difficult. You have a health meter, and it's very easy to die in Mega Man, right? You're almost intended to die multiple times in each level. It's very difficult to do. And I would say each level almost feels like its own kind of mini roguelite in the sense that it doesn't take very long. I mean, some of these levels you can do in 20 minutes, others might take you an hour or two. But the idea is that you have to get through the entire thing and beat the boss, without dying, obviously. I mean, you might get like a couple lives on some of the levels, but generally speaking, you've got to get through the whole thing. And then when you beat a boss, you get the boss's ability to help you on other bosses. So in a weird way, yes, it's a platformer. Yes, it's, obviously, one of those things back from the NES. But in a weird way, it almost feels kind of roguelite-y as well. And I'm not a big fan of roguelites, but this is the kind of thing that, because I'm such a big fan of platformers, and because I respect Mega Man so much, I feel like if I play through the Mega Man series, that might actually get me into roguelites, funny enough. But anyways, I beat the first level in Mega Man. You can do the levels in any order, but it's the top one, the one that you're probably supposed to do first. That's the easiest to do. And I'm going to kind of try to follow the order of whatever one's easiest and just kind of go around the circle that way. Because obviously, if I jumped right into the last boss without any of the extra abilities, it would probably be very difficult for me, I would imagine. So that's my goal. And I'm going to take Mega Man slow. If I beat all 6 next year, fantastic. If I only beat 2 or 3 next year, that's fine. I'd like to beat at least 2, right? Because I'd like to at least have Mega Man 2 for my end-of-year ranking next year. So we'll see what happens on that. I'm not going to really push for it too hard. I'm just going to kind of have fun. Whenever I feel like I'm starved for Mega Man, I'll play Mega Man, and that's what we'll do. It's not going to be one of those things that I sit around for hours playing. It's just not one of those things for me. I guess the last thing to talk about as well, because I only played about half an hour of Mega Man, so I don't really have a ton to say. But I did also start Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney. What is the name of that game, actually? I started the first Ace Attorney game, which I believe, yeah, it's just called Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney. That's the name of the game. And I actually have a couple collections, but I have the original Ace Attorney games from the DS in a collection that I also got in that same Humble Bundle, and I started the game there. And so I've played about an hour, 45 minutes or so of the first Ace Attorney game, so not a ton, but honestly, I was really enjoying the first Ace Attorney game. I've only ever really played one visual novel before, and that was The Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog. If you were just trying to figure out what the heck I just said, it is a Steam game. It's a free game on Steam. It's completely free. You can play it. It came out for April Fool's Day a couple of years ago. It's a visual novel. It's great. I thought it was a lot of fun. It's a little childish. It's not super well developed, but it's fun. It was just plain fun. And obviously, something like Ace Attorney is a bit more popular or a bit more traditional of a visual novel. It's kind of one of the quintessential visual novels that everybody's got to play. And that goes for Mega Man too. It's not a visual novel, but Mega Man and Ace Attorney, they were both games that I was like, you know what? I really need to play these games. They're kind of things that everybody has played at some point, and so they're pretty mainstream things that I definitely wanted to get around to at some point. And so that was kind of where I was at with both of these. Obviously, with Ace Attorney, I've only done one case so far, and I'm working on the second one. I think I'm almost to the point where I actually finish that up and to finish up the second case and move on to the third. But Ace Attorney is great. I thought it was very fun. I liked the actual trial part of it, obviously, and I liked the questioning of all the characters and the investigation and stuff that you do. I thought it was a lot of fun. It's very logic based. There's not a ton of penalty, I guess, for not doing the right thing. You can sometimes have to redo the level or something, which I've not had to do yet, but I imagine at some point I'll get there. So it's not like super high stakes or anything, but it's kind of fun. And there's in the story, there's already been a couple of weird twists that I didn't expect, and so I've definitely enjoyed my time so far with Ace Attorney. And apparently, it's a pretty long game, like 18 hours or something, which is a lot longer than I expected. I figured it was gonna be like 6 or 7 or maybe 8. But I'll get through it. If it's not something I'm gonna rush either, I'm not gonna plan to play all 3 of the Ace Attorney games this year. I just want to play this one, and if I get to other ones and I'm feeling like playing other ones, then great. But at least for now, I'm really only caring about finishing just one this year. I want to be introduced to the Ace Attorney series. I'm not necessarily looking to play through the entire series right now. I probably will at some point. Not really on my agenda right this moment. So that's kind of where I'm at. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. And so these are definitely things that I'm hoping to finish up pretty early next year. Obviously, after Christmas, I'll start a lot of new stuff as well. At some point, I got to play Clair Obscur next year as well. We'll talk about Clair Obscur later, obviously, when talking about the Game Awards. But yeah, I think that's probably going to wrap it up or finish it up. We're going to wrap it up for the first segment of the show today. Obviously, we don't have music to play anymore, but yeah, that kind of sums up the stuff I've been playing and the kind of things I've been up to. I'm going to talk about the Game Awards, which happened last Thursday, December 11th, and we'll be talking about that here in just a moment. So I guess there's not going to be any music, but we'll take a quick, there'll be a few seconds, and then I'll come back. All right, everybody, welcome to this here segment where we talk about the Game Awards 2025 show. So obviously the Game Awards were last Thursday on December 11th. I live streamed the entire show. It was about a 4.5-hour stream. It was a lot of fun. Thanks to anybody who showed up to that or has watched it since. It was definitely a fun time. And I thought overall the 2025 Game Awards were awesome. I thought the announcements were pretty solid. Not a ton of stuff that pertains to me, but that's kind of what I come to expect from these shows. Obviously, we're not going to hear from Nintendo. And so, there were a few things that interested me, I should say. And then as far as the award and stuff, generally speaking, I was pretty happy with how things went. Obviously, there's a couple things I don't like, but generally, I'm not upset about anything too crazily. So I guess we'll pretty much go every single announcement, or at least most announcements. We'll just go one by one. I'll share my thoughts on each one, and I don't know how long this will take, but let's do it. So obviously the pre-show began at was it 7? I think it began, and the very first game they showed, which I guess I should actually mention, the pre-show host. It's the same one they've had for years now, Sydney Goodman. And obviously she does the pre-show for the first like half an hour or whatever, and then Jeff Keighley comes out and he does the rest of it. He's kind of the main guy behind the scenes as well. He's the head honcho for the whole Game Awards situation. The first game they showed was The Free Shepherd, which is an indie game where you play as a dog. Obviously, you know, we really didn't see a whole lot about this one. It was very limited, just a few seconds, really, of gameplay. But this is a new indie game coming out. It was announced for consoles. It looks good. I don't know, honestly, I don't really know much about this game because we really didn't see a whole lot. We do know that it's from Frame Interactive, and it's supposed to be coming out in 2027. I actually have heard a couple people since the show talking about it. I know a lot of people thought it looked cool art style wise. Otherwise, I don't really know. I don't know much about it. So, I will say, you know, a big thing for me is like, you know, I have nothing against indie games. I'm not like specifically a fan of indie games. I know there's a lot of people out there that are like, "Oh, I love indie games," and I think that's a little silly to like specifically like indie games, because you know you can like certain indie games for sure, but just the idea of having indie games, you know, as a interest just in general, I think is sort of I think to say that you like indie games is to put all indie games in a similar category, to say that they're all the same thing, to say that they all have the same ideas. And that's obviously not true. And so I don't think obviously people mean to say that they support, you know, the smaller studios, and that's all cool, but obviously there's indie games I like and indie games I don't like, just as there are with AAA games, just as there are with Nintendo games on it. There's even Nintendo games I don't like, and obviously many that I do. And so to say that you like indie games or don't like indie games, I think is kind of silly. Anyways, but of course, you know, there are a lot of people out there who play pretty much every indie game, and, you know, lots of people, honestly, I would say, maybe not the majority, but at least the majority of the vocal people, the people that you hear online on these other podcasts and stuff, I'm pretty weird in the sense that I play a lot of old stuff. A lot of people on the other podcasts that I listen to, they might play some old stuff here or there, right? Like a few a year. Like my favorite podcast, I talk about them all the time, This Nintendo Life. The guys on there, you know, they have like they have their top 10 list for games that they played in a year that they didn't. That didn't release that year. And of course, that's kind of similar to the list I do, except I don't even do a list for games that came out that year because I don't play enough, you know? I mean, there's lots of games that I'm interested in every year, but honestly, I tend to not play games in their release year. You know, I usually play them a few years later, right? Because I don't generally, for most things, see a point in rushing out and playing a new game, particularly for indie stuff, because I know that indie stuff is the kind of thing that'll be on sale for $1 or $5 at most in just a couple of years, and so I'm not really rushing out to play that stuff. There might be something here or there, but generally speaking, not much of a focus for me, so this is one that'll come out in a couple of years, and I'm sure lots of people will talk about it. I will not be one of those people that'll talk about it, at least initially. I mean, eventually, maybe. But that's kind of where I'm at with indie games. You know, I have nothing against them, but I'm usually not, like, frothing at the mouth to get my hands on a new indie game. All right, the first award that they administered, I guess you could say, at the Game Awards show, they still did in the pre-show, and that was Family Game, also known as Nintendo Game, Best Nintendo Game of the Year. Every year this happens. This is one of my biggest frustrations with the Game Awards. It shows their anti-Nintendo bias. Or at the very least, the industry, maybe not them specifically, but the industry is anti-Nintendo bias, because some of the games they nominate for this, Luigi's Mansion 3 got a nomination in 2019 for Best Family Game. Like, yes, there is a multiplayer, but like it's a side mode. It's like an online thing. It's not something you play as a family. And just because it's a Nintendo game does not automatically mean that it's a family game. That is completely ridiculous. That makes absolutely zero sense. When they say family game, they're just talking about anything that looks vaguely cartoony or is designed by Nintendo.
And that is completely ridiculous. I don't know why that would be the stipulation for best family game. That's stupid. Something like Luigi's Mansion 3 is not a family game. A game like Donkey Kong Bonanza is not a family game, right? If you're playing that as a family, then you're stupid, all right? So, I mean, if there's a 3-year-old child and a parent there with them, that's one thing. But it's not the kind of thing that I'm gonna like, get my parents like, oh, everybody gather around, let's play some Donkey Kong Bonanza. That makes no sense, right? That's a single player game. Yes, there is technically a second player option, but like only kind of. That's how 3D Mario games work. All right, Mario Odyssey, not a family game. Yes, you can technically play with 2 characters, but not really. All right, Mario Odyssey is in no way more of a family game than Elden Ring is. And yet you would never see Elden Ring nominated for a family game because it's not made by Nintendo and it doesn't look cartoony, right? It's completely ridiculous. It's a stupid category. That being said, Donkey Kong Bonanza won, and I'm at least glad that Bonanza won something in a year where it was undoubtedly, in my mind, the best game that came out. And I mean, that being said, like I said before, I don't play a lot of games in the release year. From all the games I've seen and heard about and want to play, Clair Obscur definitely seems like it may also be right up in that echelon. Personally, I would say even if I absolutely loved Clair Obscur even more than I think I will, I'll probably still prefer Bonanza, to be honest, because that's kind of more my jam, right? 3D platformers are kind of my thing, or at least platformers in general. RPGs are kind of my second thing, to be honest. But, Bonanza is better than some Mario games, in some 3D Mario games, in my opinion. So I would imagine that even if I end up playing Clair Obscur, which I do plan to, sometime probably starting in January is my guess, because even if I don't get it for Christmas, I'm definitely going to be buying Clair Obscur pretty much right after Christmas. It's one of those things that, like, I put on my, I was something I wanted for Christmas, and if I don't get it, then absolutely I'll buy it the day after Christmas, like, because it's just one of those things. Like, I really need to get around to playing, and I'm very excited to. It's definitely one of those things that I want to start the year off with. It won't be in the first week or so, but probably in the next couple of weeks following that. So anyways, Bonanza, incredible game. I'm really glad that it got an award. Obviously, Nintendo taking home an award, that happened. I feel like usually Nintendo wins like something, but it's usually family game. Sometimes like in 2023, right? They won Action Adventure with Tears of the Kingdom. I don't think Nintendo won anything last year, actually, now that I think about it. Which sort of makes sense. It was a pretty quiet year for Nintendo releases, to be honest. You did have, like, Mario and Luigi Brothership, you had Echoes of Wisdom, which, by the way, Echoes of Wisdom was a phenomenal game. Honestly, that is the kind of game that I actually could have seen nominated for Action Adventure. It wasn't, unfortunately. Mario and Luigi Brothership, I'm not really surprised that it wasn't nominated for anything. That doesn't really shock me or anything. But anyways, my point is, Nintendo often does win something, but they obviously don't win a ton of stuff, and so it was kind of neat. And Doug Bowser accepted the award. Which I had no idea that guy was still around. Honestly, I thought he left the company years ago. I've not seen him in years. And I like to think that I generally kind of know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I was like, wow, Doug Bowser? Like, that's insane. And apparently he was on his last couple of weeks or something at the company, so he's gonna be gone again. But I was just like, since when is he still around? The next game they showed off was Decrepit. I don't know how you say that. It's with a T. Decrepit. This game is supposed to be coming out next year in 2026. It's by, do I even try? I think it's Yammerdal. It's Scandinavian. It's got they're Swedish, I think. It's got the 2 dots over the A. I believe it's Yammerdal or something like that. But anyways, it looks like Jammerdale, but I'm assuming that's not what it is. I would assume it's Yammerdal. But anyways, it's by those guys. They're from Sweden. I think they're from Sweden. Pretty sure. They're Scandinavian, obviously. But anyways, and so that's a new Souls-like. Souls-like, definitely not my category. I can almost guarantee you this is a game that I'm not going to play. So, it's cool, right? I'm happy that these games exist. They seem like, They seem like at least quality things, but I am definitely not all over them, let's say. So they're just not my thing. I'm not a Souls-like guy. I could see myself getting into some Souls games eventually. If I was ever to play some Souls games, it would probably be either the main Dark Souls series, or obviously some of the Metroidvanias, like Hollow Knight and that kind of stuff, because I'm not a Metroidvania guy either, but I am trying to get into Metroidvanias, and so there's quite a few Metroidvanias, particularly Hollow Knight. That's obviously the most popular, that are also Souls-likes, and so I could see myself potentially playing a couple Souls games, but I'm definitely not a Souls guy. Like, that is not my thing. It is very much not my thing. It's quite out of my realm, and so I'm not looking to play anything like that. The next thing was Audio Mag. I wrote in parentheses, because I was taking notes for the show, I wrote in parentheses, crazy lights thing. That was my way to remember this game, because it was a 2D thing, and it's from the guy that made Audio Surf, which was a pretty popular thing. I had definitely heard about it. I never honestly heard anybody really talking about it. But I had heard of the game. But yeah, Audio Surf, it's the same guy. He's now making Audio Mech. Seems like a pretty similar game, to be honest. Like, they seem like kind of similar things. This is I guess it's a 2D platformer, I suppose. I'm not really entirely sure how the level structure works, so maybe I shouldn't call it a 2D platform, but it's somewhere in that vein. It's a side-scrolling thing. And yeah, it's like a crazy lights. There's a lot of lights. The art style is simple, but I don't know. I mean, it seemed fine. Again, this is probably not the kind of thing that I would be super into. I feel like we're getting more and more of these in the last couple of years, these indie games that are almost brainless, mindless, and I think it's just an aspect of our society, right? We see short form video and all this kind of stuff, obviously blow up, and I think that a lot of these video games, a lot of indie games and stuff are kind of taking a lot of the same approaches. You see something like Ball X Pit that came out this year, and that game, I mean, I'm not saying it's poorly designed. I don't mean to insult the developers, but it's it's brain candy. It's just constantly. You could even say that about Donkey Kong Bonanza, right? It's brain candy, right? You got the smashing, right? That's the whole mechanic. Now, honestly, I think I prefer Bonanza more for its exploration and for its platforming and stuff. But I've got to admit, it is also kind of fun to go around and smash some things. So we're all guilty to some degree. Obviously, you see it as well with the whole cleaning genre. I know that's almost in a way, it's almost opposite, right? Because it's so, I guess, in comparison, it's relaxed, right? There's not as much going on with all the lights and stuff. However, it is kind of similar in the fact that it's all about, it's a brain game. It's satisfaction, right? You see something like Power Wash Simulator, or honestly, there's been a lot of those games. Glottalnaut was something I think that came out last year, actually. But anyways, you see a lot of those games here recently, a lot of the cleaning games, or organizing, unpacking. I guess that's a few years old now, but Assemble with Care, or what's that other one called? I don't know. There's a lot of those, right? I'm sure everybody's played a few of those. I can't remember them all, but anyways, so this is another one of those things, and I don't mean any offense to the developer, obviously. I mean, it looks like it's a well-made game. It's just another one of those things. I don't think I need that in my life. All right, next award was Innovation in Accessibility. I've got to admit, this is not a category that I really care about. I mean, obviously, that might sound cold, but I'm not somebody who needs those accessibility options, and so for me, I'm like, oh, okay, innovation. I had no idea these games had done anything in that sphere. I'm like, okay, cool, good for them. I'm not really too concerned. I'm like, all right, cool. Good for them. I'm glad, right? I mean, yes, I guess in a way I wish every game would do that, but at the same time, it's not going to bother me too much if they don't, because I don't need that. And so if you're somebody that does, obviously I totally understand that you would be really happy about that, but for me, it doesn't make a whole lot of difference. I don't know I'm not going to name all the nominees for these things, but Innovation and Accessibility, I know Assassin's Creed Shadows and Doom: The Dark Ages were both in there, and I kind of wanted them to win. I know the Doom series in the last couple of entries has done a bunch of accessibility stuff, but also Doom: The Dark Ages was a game that came out this year. I've not played it, but it seems really good, and I wanted it to win something, and it did end up winning accessibility, so I was like, all right, cool. It's kind of like Donkey Kong Bonanza. I'm like, all right, I really wanted that game to win something. I'm glad that it won something, even though, the accessibility category is not really like, I mean, like, I don't think it's the most coveted of awards at the Game Awards. It's still cool, I guess, to win something. All right, they also announced Guild Wars 2. Apparently, the first Guild Wars was pretty popular. I had no idea. I didn't even know that was a thing, to be honest with you. It's an MMORPG. It's very much out of my realm. It's not something I know much about. I've not really heard people specifically being excited about this because, again, it's out of my circle. But it seems like one of those things that was made out as if it was a huge announcement, and so I'm sure there's lots of people out there that it totally is a huge announcement. So I'm happy for those people. All right, Escape from Duckov. This was actually an indie game that seemed really cool. This is the kind of thing that I think I will probably play at some point. Probably not right when it comes out. This is a roguelite, but you play as a duck. And I was totally unaware of this game's existence. Apparently, it has been around. But they announced some new, like a new map or something, like some new, like a seasonal map or something. This is something that I had no idea this game was even around. Like, so, you know, I feel like I'm generally pretty knowledgeable, and so it was definitely kind of surprised to me. But I was like, oh, okay. I actually originally thought this was like a totally new game, but apparently it's been out, which is cool. I had no idea. It definitely seemed like a neat thing. I might play it at some point. All right. They did have some like esports awards. I don't know any of the people in there, so I'm not really going to talk about that. The next big thing, this was actually a pretty big thing, was Pragmata. I've heard a lot of people talking about this since the Game Awards. I do believe it was announced before, but this was kind of its big announcement. This is a new Capcom game. It's like it's a new like big budget, you know, single player, behind the back, one of those cool things. I definitely like a lot of those games. You know, it's almost like the Sony style stuff, right? Obviously, they didn't invent the concept, but definitely one of those ones that you expect games like that. And it was announced that it is also coming out on the Switch too, which is great. I'm definitely happy about that. It's coming out on April 24th. And there's going to be a demo for it, so I'm definitely going to try that demo when it comes out, and I'm going to see if it's something that seems to run pretty well on Switch 2. If it comes out on Switch 2, I'll probably play this game, actually. It seemed decently interesting, and I'm obviously down for third-party stuff on Switch 2. I'm very excited, and I'm willing to support third-party endeavors on Switch 2 because I want as much third-party support on the console as we can have. I understand that it's important, and I think it's neat. You know, I think it's cool to be able to play some of these other games on Nintendo consoles because for a little while that's not really been a thing, or at least not a common thing. And so that's definitely cool. So I will probably play this as long as the demo proves to me that it'll run pretty well on the Switch too. If not, then obviously I do have a PS5, but I'm probably not going to be like rushing to play this game because I won't be quite as excited about it, is my guess. I may still play it at some point, but I don't know if it'll be next year or not. But yeah, if it does run on Switch 2 pretty well, then I might consider it. They did also talk about best mobile game or something related to mobile games. Umasume won that, and honestly, I had like heard the name, but I had absolutely no idea what Umasume was. I think so. It's a mobile game. I'm pretty sure it's one of those like a Genshin Impact or like a Honkai Star Rail, like one of those things. I'm good. Like no thanks. Like I don't need to no need to play those games. But hey, I mean, you know, it's something. It's pretty popular. It's Chinese. I know a lot of people. I don't know people personally, thank goodness. But I know that there's a lot of people online that are into that kind of stuff. So I'm like, all right, good for you. Whatever. I don't know. As far as mobile games, I was kind of hoping Persona 5, was it the Phantom X or whatever? I was hoping that would win because I'm a Persona fan, even though I've only played one game. I liked it, so I guess I'm a Persona fan now. And there was also, what was it, Sonic? What was that Sonic mobile game? Was it Sonic Rumble? No, not Sonic Rumble. That's another thing. Sonic Rumble is, what is that, like an arcade game, I think. Or maybe it is Sonic Rumble. Maybe that's all. I don't know. Whatever it is. I think maybe it is 2025. Or sorry, maybe it it is 2025. What am I saying? I don't know what I'm saying. Maybe that is the game. I don't know. But anyways, I was hoping one of those two would win because obviously they're series that I recognize and appreciate. Solasta 2 was announced. Now, Solasta, I had heard of Solasta. Honestly, I didn't know what it was. It was one of those things that I'd heard the name, but I wasn't, really familiar with it. But it was another thing that was announced there. It's one of those like tactics RPGs. It looks almost, I guess, I always like. I know I've had conversations with people that don't understand the idea of a tactics RPG, and I'm like, oh, it's kind of like Civilization, but not really. It's like, but you're actually like, it's like an RPG combat, but it's top down, and it's almost like Civilization in the sense that you're moving individual units around and stuff. But I think most people probably understand what tactics are, at least if you're listening to this show. So I don't know. Solasta, it seems like one of those things that's a little bit above my head. I've not played a lot of tactics stuff, and so there are some tactics games that I want to play. Final Fantasy: The Evilist Chronicles, I'm definitely excited to play that. So and Fire Emblem, Advance Wars, those kind of games, I'm definitely looking to play. But Solasta does not seem like the kind of thing I would get into. Or Valkyria Chronicles seems cool as well. So who knows? Maybe if I played some of those games and got super into it or something, then maybe Solasta would be on my radar, but as far as it stands right now, I'm good. The next thing, Tank Rat. I believe this was the first time we had seen Tank Rat. Tank Rat, this game was actually quite strange and surprising. It was just not really something that I, like, it was kind of out of nowhere, I guess, in a way. But it's coming out in March of 2026, and as you may be able to guess by the title, you play as a tank. And it's another one by Kepler Interactive. They're the people that published Clair Obscur, so you can definitely see the... I read some posts online, people were like, oh wow, that Clair Obscur money is really paying off already, right? Because we saw a couple of different games announced from Kepler. Yeah, Tank Rat, it's like a super crazy realistic looking thing, but it also looked like it had a lot of zaniness and fun, and we only got like a minute long trailer, but it's definitely one of those ones that, from what I've seen, seems kind of neat, and it might be something that I play at some point. Alright, this was one of our first, like, big categories, like, actually, like, important categories, I would say, as far as video game awards. That was Best Indie Game, right? Best indie game is always something that's pretty important. Obviously, indie games become a huge part of the industry, and so I think a lot of people, myself included, kind of expected Best Indie to go to like Silksong or Hades 2 or one of these games, because I figured Clair Obscur would win some other stuff, and then it would be in the running for Game of the Year. I figured something like Silksong or Hades would win Best Indie. It was as kind of like a consolation, almost, in a way. And no, in fact, Best Indie did go to Clair Obscur Expedition 33, and from all I've seen, it's very deserving of that title. I know there's people out there that are like, oh, well, Clair Obscur, it's not really an indie. Like, it is an indie, right? Because Sandfall is definitely an independent studio, and Kepler, obviously, a publisher of independent software. However, Clair Obscur, it's more of it's almost AAA in a way, right? I mean, it's pretty big budget. It feels a little bit more AAA-y, some people have said, and so I don't know. I can understand that argument from what I've seen, but at the end of the day, it is independent. It is an indie game, right? I mean, like, I don't know. I almost the definition is pretty stretched already. I don't feel like it's a very sound definition, so maybe there's some work that could be done there. I don't know, but I don't think anybody really cares too much, at least until their favorite game doesn't win. Then they start caring. So but anyways, I like I said, Clair Obscur, definitely a game I want to play. I was happy to see it win this award. But honestly, after it won this award, I was like, oh, I guess Clair Obscur is probably not winning Game of the Year, because I thought it was possible before. I was like, well, shoot, I don't think it's going to happen because, it got this other award. I think that's probably going to be what it goes home with. But obviously, we'll get there. The next game, this was probably my favorite game, maybe my favorite, maybe my second favorite. It was big. Bradley the Badger, my favorite game announcement, probably, or second favorite. Developed by Day 4 Night with a number 4. It's a totally new studio. This is like their first game, and it's kind of a strange phenomenon of a studio, I would say. It's with the lead designer of Red Dead Redemption, and the creators of the Mario plus Rabbids series. So you put Mario plus Rabbids and Red Dead Redemption together, and you get Bradley the Badger. So I don't know exactly how that happens, but there you go. Bradley the Badger. Wow, it seemed like such an interesting game. This game, wow. I mean, we got a whole 2 minutes of this. We got a lot of different stuff. I think it seems like Bradley the Badger is a 3D platformer, or at least kind of. I guess it's an action adventure game, but there were a lot of different aspects. We saw like so many different things. I mean, we saw almost Souls-like elements. We saw almost 3D Metroidvania-y elements, but we saw a lot of puzzle stuff. We saw a lot of platforming, some collecting stuff. I mean, it seems like a huge, very intensive game. This is definitely a game I want to play, and it honestly might end up being something that I do play on day one of it coming out. And did we? I don't know if I wrote anything down. Did we get a release date? I'm not sure that we did. Hold on. I don't think we did, yeah. We don't yet know either what platforms Bradley the Badger is coming to, but obviously I'm assuming that this game will probably come out everywhere. At the very least, it'll come out on PlayStation and Xbox at some point. It may also come out on Switch too. It seems like the kind of game that could be, right? It seems like a higher profile indie, even though this is their first game from the studio. It definitely seems something that could come out on all consoles, regardless. So I wouldn't be too surprised. It's one of those things. I know I just said that I might play it day one, but if it's going to be PC only, then I might actually not. But at the very least, I'll probably play it the first day it comes to consoles. So if it comes out on just PlayStation, I'll probably play it there. If not, if it's going to come to Switch too, I'll probably wait for that. We'll see what happens. But I definitely want to play this game at some point. All right, Stupid Never Dies. This was a weird, crazy trailer. I actually, for the first 30 seconds of the trailer, I had absolutely no idea what this game was. I was like, I don't even know what genre we're in here, because it was all cutscenes and honestly, it was very difficult to tell what was going on. For all I knew, this could have been an RPG. But instead, it is a character action, I guess it's almost an action RPG, you could say, action adventure, whatever you want to call it. But it's an action game. It's from GPT Track 50. I'm actually looking up. I don't think they've made anything else. I think these are totally new people as well. This game had a crazy art style, crazy spectacle. It seemed like a huge thing. I'm sure lots of people are gonna love this. For me though, I don't know. I have not really played character action games per se, and so it may be something that I play at some point. I'm not gonna bet on it though. I'm not appalled by it. It's not one of those things that I'm specifically gonna avoid, but I'm not necessarily looking to play it either. Best Adaptation was the next award that they announced. That's including movies and shows and stuff. I think really this award came down to Minecraft and The Last of Us Part 2. So the Minecraft movie, I think it's called A Minecraft Movie, I'm pretty sure what it's called. And then The Last of Us Part 2, or The Last of Us Season 2, I guess, of the show. Honestly, I did actually expect this to go to the Minecraft movie, and instead it went to The Last of Us, which doesn't completely shock me, right? I know obviously I heard a lot of people talking about that show this year, but I did honestly expect it to go to Minecraft because I think Minecraft had a pretty big cultural impact, but I understand that obviously it's probably not as high quality, and so that might be why it didn't get the award. That kind of makes sense, right? So I'm not upset or anything, obviously. I don't really care too much about video game adaptations. I watched the Mario movie. I'll probably watch the second one. At some point, I'll probably watch the Sonic movies, but I'm just not that bothered, generally speaking. I'm here to play video games, I'm not here to watch movies about video games. And so, I may at some point, I don't have, where did the Halo show came out? I actually don't know where the platform that came out on. But if I end up playing through all the Halo games, I may watch that show at some point. The same goes for The Last of Us. If I play the second game, I may watch that show at some point. Right now, I don't have any subscription services, or any streaming services, I should say. But at some point, if I do again, then I don't know, maybe, right? But it's just not one of those things that I'm necessarily looking into. It's too much. So it's not one of my biggest things that I'm looking to do for sure. All right, the action game category. That category went to Hades 2. So Hades 2 was gonna walk away with an award after all. It seems very deserving of that. Honestly, when they first announced the action category, I wasn't really expecting Hades 2 to win. I was honestly expecting it to go to Ninja Gaiden 4 or Shinobi. And I would have been happy with either of those. Ninja Gaiden 4 seems like a interesting thing. Shinobi Art of Vengeance, though, seems like an awesome game that I definitely want to play at some point. So I was kind of rooting for Shinobi, but I'm definitely not upset about Hades. It definitely deserves to win as well. I mean, it's obviously got some very interesting combat. Like it's definitely. I mean, the first one as well, right? Like I've not played Hades. I'm going to at some point, probably. I'm just not a huge roguelite guy either. But it seems pretty interesting. I've got to admit that it definitely seems like some well-designed, quality combat. All right, this was probably the most important announcement of the show. I don't know, that could be controversial to say. It's definitely one that I thought was cool too. Star Wars: Fate of the Old Republic. In the beginning of this trailer, I actually did not immediately recognize it as a Star Wars game. I was like, oh, this is like some weird sci-fi thing, and I was like, wait a minute, this kind of looks like Star Wars, doesn't it? And then obviously it hit me eventually. I was like, oh my gosh, wait, this actually totally is Star Wars. And yeah, I mean, it is in fact Star Wars. This is like a spiritual successor to the original KOTOR games, developed by Arcanaut Studios, and they are brand new. They were actually founded in July of this year. So there's already people talking about how this game is probably not going to come out for years and years, like 2030, quite possibly. But yeah, Arcanaut, they're a brand new studio. It is obviously being published by Lucasfilm Games, obviously collaboration with Disney and all that stuff. But yeah, this is a new game similar to the KOTOR games. Dang, I can't talk. I believe it is from the original director and a lot of the same people that originally made the KOTOR games back on like original Xbox and stuff. So this is definitely something that seems pretty cool. I've not played the KOTOR games, or at least I've started the first one and honestly wasn't super into it. I'm not really a CRPG guy per se. I at some point want to play Fallout, and maybe that'll get me into KOTOR, but it doesn't really seem like my category, if I'm being totally honest with you. I may at some point try KOTOR again, but it's just another one of those things that seems super long and not super interesting for me, and so, I don't know, I may at some point warm up to it and try it, but it's not necessarily on my agenda of things to play. Even though I may at some point. But yeah, obviously this is a huge announcement. I know it's definitely one of the bigger things. The Star Wars game is obviously pretty big, just, by default, right? A lot of people talk about that, and yeah, it's a cool thing. And I'm definitely, it's a cool announcement. I'm happy that it's there, but it's definitely something that I'm interested to follow. I mean, like a lot of people online are saying, though, we probably won't hear about this game for a handful of years because the studio was just founded, and a lot of games, especially one on this scale, seems like it'll probably take at least 4 or 5 years, quite possibly 6. So I don't know. We'll see what happens, but it could be like a 2030, 2031, maybe 2032 if it gets delayed, kind of game. So who knows what's going to happen by then? We'll probably be on the Switch 3 by then, or we'll probably be on the Switch 3 by then, because Nintendo is probably going to go down the Switch route. But anyways, we'll see what happens. But yeah, that's gonna be weird when that comes out, because it'll be one of those things that I remember talking about on the podcast, like, oh yeah, it's one of those things. It's weird because obviously this was my first year of doing the podcast, and listening to all of these old podcasts, and like, I'll be listening to episodes from like 2017, and there's people talking about Metroid Prime 4, and I'm like, wow, they had no idea how long it would be until that game came out, and now, this game could quite possibly end up being something like that for me, or for, any other more recent shows and stuff. But anyways, we'll see what happens. I'm not going to speculate too much. I guess I am actually going to speculate, but I shouldn't speculate too much. Let's just move on. Okay, so the next thing announced was Battlefield RedSec. This is a free-to-play tie-in to Battlefield 6. I don't know exactly what this game is. As somebody who's never played a Battlefield game and doesn't play a lot of shooters, I'm a little confused. I'm assuming this is it seems kind of like a Warzone thing. Kind of like with Call of Duty. Each Call of Duty has its respective Warzone, and that's kind of a free-to-play, like a Battle Royale version. It seems like RedSec is the same thing for Battlefield. It's just their Call of Duty Warzone. Obviously, I really don't care, but it's a big announcement for some people, and that's cool. I'm happy for those people. I'm just not somebody that plays a lot of shooters, and I don't think I ever will be. Next up, we had Soulframe. This is another one I'm going to skip over pretty quickly. It's another Souls-like. It's from the people that made Warframe, though, so that's interesting, I suppose. And it's developed by Digital Extremes. But it's another Souls-like. I'm not really too big on Souls-likes, like I've already said multiple times, so I'm going to kind of move on from this. Toxic Commando. This game actually did seem pretty neat. I'm not sure that I'd play it, or I should say John Carpenter's Toxic Commando. I believe the John Carpenter part is part of the actual title. But this is an upcoming shooter. I know I just said I don't play a whole lot of shooters, and I don't. But this game's coming out on March 12th. It's a zombie game. And I know, it kind of seems like, zombie games are kind of dead. Zombie games are kind of over, and that's probably true. But hey, I mean, it's still, there still are some that come out every now and then. And the thing that I liked about Toxic Commando, was just how zany and how crazy ridiculous it was. I love games that do that kind of stuff. That's part of why I love Yakuza so much. It's just over the top, like crazy, like funny, all that kind of stuff. And that's one of the things I like most about video games, about certain ones at least. And so Toxic Commando seems kind of interesting. I'm gonna imagine I probably won't play it, but it's at least something that I'll probably be rooting for next year's Game Awards, even if I haven't played it. Not for Game of the Year, but for some smaller category. The next thing, I said earlier that Star Wars might have been the biggest announcement of the whole event. I'm actually thinking now maybe this is Divinity. There's a new Divinity game coming out, and I think it's just called Divinity. I don't think there's any sort of subtitle or anything. But I don't know. Maybe they just didn't announce one, and it will have one. I'm not entirely sure. But anyways, there's a new Divinity game. It's by Larian Studios. For those who don't know, that's the same people that made Baldur's Gate 3. Obviously, that was a huge game that came out in 2023 and ended up winning Game of the Year. It beat Tears of the Kingdom, all this stuff. It's a huge game. Lots of people play it. It's super popular. Divinity is actually Larian's original game. That's what they first made. So it's definitely a big deal. It's another thing that I'm probably not going to play, but it's pretty cool. The next award they gave out was for Best Performance. This one went to Jennifer English. The funny thing about this was that almost every single nominee for this category was from Clair Obscur. So it was basically a bunch of people competing against each other. You had 3 people from Clair Obscur, one from Ghost of Yote, one from Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, one from Silent Hill F. So half of the nominees were from Clair Obscur, and one of the Clair Obscur people won. But I just found it really funny how they had 3 people from the same game and Best Performance. Obviously, there's no rule against that, so I'm not saying it's messed up or anything, but it is kind of funny. I thought it was pretty funny that we ended up with that situation, and even more funny that one of them ended up winning. The next game was another thing that seemed pretty cool. This game is called For Loop. We don't really know a whole lot about it. It's going to be an upcoming PlayStation exclusive. But it seemed kind of interesting. I don't know entirely what's going on with this. It seems like it's sort of a roguelike shooter, based kind of similar to Left 4 Dead because it's the same director. I don't know. It seemed kind of interesting. It's definitely not something I'll play, but it's one of those things I could see myself maybe watching some footage of and trying to figure out what it is. The next game was super weird. Coven of the Chickenfoot, which has got to be one of the craziest names for a game that I've heard. This is it seems like a kind of a action adventure, not necessarily action adventure, but adventure puzzle platformer is how I would describe it, but it's in 3D. As you can kind of guess based on Coven, you're playing as a witch. So she's this very old lady, like 80 or 90 years old or something. And the funny thing is, and there were a lot of people talking about this online, including me when I was originally reacting to it, but there were multiple moments where the witch would lift heavy objects or make jumps that would just not be possible for a regular human, let alone a 90-year-old woman. And so it was pretty funny. But obviously, I'm assuming that has to do partially with the fact that she's a witch. But it was a little funny seeing this like crazy old lady like pick up these heavy objects or make these huge jumps and stuff. The physics of the whole thing seemed really weird too. Like you would make a jump and you would get a little float at the end. So I'm not sure if that's like an in-universe thing based on the fact that she's a witch or if the physics are just a little strange in the game. I don't know. But either way, Covenant of the Chicken Foot seemed pretty interesting. I mean, again, it's probably not something I'll play, but it seemed interesting for sure. Antos was another sort of sci-fi thing. Seems like a pretty narrative-based thing, adventure game. I don't know. We didn't really get a ton of information about this either, and I don't think I was really paying a ton of attention when this was being shown, but I don't know. Looking at the trailer again now, it seems mildly interesting. I don't know exactly all the details. I don't think anybody knows all the details. It's from Frictional Games, or the makers of Soma. And also the Amnesia series. There were 3 of those games. And I'm seeing here Penumbra, but I don't even know what Penumbra is. So or Penumbra, maybe you guys know. I do not know what Penumbra is. I have heard of the Amnesia series and Soma, obviously. But yeah, it's those guys. So I don't know. New game from them. That's cool. I don't really know much about them, and I don't really care too much, but it's definitely a pretty big announcement, I would say. Next game announced, you had Angels of Delusion. This seems like another Umasume, Honkai Star Rail, Genshin Impact, whatever else. Seems like another one of those things. I'm gonna pass on that. I don't really know what's up with that stuff. Then the Switch 2 logo pops up on screen, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we're gonna have a Switch 2 game announced, and this is gonna be crazy and cool. And no, it was just an advertisement. It was an advertisement that Resident Evil, Requiem, the Duskbloods, and Final Fantasy 14, or was it? No, sorry, Final Fantasy 7 remake were all coming to the Switch 2. It was just a little advertisement. Nintendo had a few advertisements at the Game Awards this year. They clearly had a much larger advertising budget this year than they have for the last few years. I'm guessing probably just because the Switch 2's out, and so obviously they probably need to do a little bit more advertising. But yeah, it definitely seems like they're putting a little bit more focus and a little bit more emphasis into some of that stuff. So that's cool. But yeah, they had like 4 different advertisements at the Game Awards this year. All right, Games for Impact went to South of Midnight. South of Midnight, it's one of those things that I actually didn't really hear a ton of people talking about until right towards the end of the year, and it came out all the way back in April. So I'm not entirely sure if I just kind of missed it, or if it's something that kind of blew up a little bit later, or if people played it back then, but there were other things to talk about, and it just kind of came back up when the Game Awards were coming up. But either way, I've now all of a sudden hearing a lot of people talking about South of Midnight again. It seems kind of interesting. It's from developer Compulsion Games. I don't think they've really made anything else that was super popular or super important. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm missing something. They've made a few other games. I'm seeing here they've got We Happy Few. They've got Contrast. I don't know what any of these games are, so I'm not super familiar with them. But yeah, South of Midnight, I heard a lot of people talking about it, and it definitely seems like something that makes sense that it would win. We got another trailer for Resident Evil Requiem. That's obviously like a huge game. A lot of people going to be interested in that. A lot of people are going to be playing that when that comes out next year in 2026. And they gave us a lot more details and stuff. I may play some Resident Evil games at some point. I'm not thinking Requiem is my jumping on point. I would probably try to start with some of the older ones. I don't know that I'd start all the way at the beginning, but at the very least, I would start somewhere a little further back. I don't think I want to jump right into Requiem. But yeah, they gave us a lot of new details about it. It was a big news that the page girl that we've been seeing in all the trailers and stuff, that's only like half the game. So you play as her for like half the game, and then you play as the main dude. What's that guy's name? Man, I really should know this. The main character from Resident Evil. Anyway, main guy from the one that was on with a chainsaw. Whatever, you guys know the one I'm talking about. I don't know his name. But anyway, he's in there, and you actually play as him for a lot of the game as well, apparently. So that's pretty cool. Order of the Sinking Puzzles is another little indie game that was shown off, I should say. And this one was pretty cool. Apparently, this is more than 10 years in development. And that's because there's literally over 1,400 puzzles, Keighley said, in this game. And apparently they're all connected narratively. So you can, play however many puzzles and then still get the narrative delivered to you, while playing things in different orders, which is really cool. And I find that, on one hand, really appealing. A game with 1,400 puzzles. I love puzzles in video games, and so part of me is almost like, oh yeah, 1,400 puzzles, let's do it. But at the same time, I feel like the game is going to be really long, probably by design. The idea is you play it a little bit over a long period of time. But I'm kind of somebody that likes to play a lot, or beat a lot of games, and kind of move from one thing to the next pretty quickly. So this seems like this game will probably not be for me, even though it seems like a neat idea. So I don't know. It's not my thing, but it definitely seems like a cool game, and yeah, I would definitely be interested in at least, finding out more about this game. They showed us Exodus as well. This game by Archetype Entertainment. They are under the wing of Wizards of the Coast, like the card company and those guys. And yeah, this is a new sci-fi. I think a lot of people were comparing it to Mass Effect, based on it's like the fact that it was made by some of the developers that originally worked on BioWare and on Mass Effect. And also there was a image going around on Reddit that I saw, where they showed the Exodus box art and the Mass Effect box art, and they were almost identical in design. So definitely seems like this is going to be that kind of game. Exodus is going to be very similar to Mass Effect, and that's kind of cool. I mean, Mass Effect obviously was a very important series at one point, and even, I guess, kind of today as well. So that's cool. Warlock was a game that was announced. It's a D&D tie-in thing. And we know basically nothing about it because they didn't announce any of the gameplay. We just got cutscenes and stuff, and they said that there would be a gameplay reveal later on, that the game was supposed to come out in 2027. Screamer, which was kind of a remake or maybe a reimagining of such, of the old Screamer back on like DOS and stuff. It looks like it's a racing game. It seemed I actually thought this game seemed really cool. I don't know much about it, but it seemed like a neat kind of thing. I wasn't super down for the art style, but the gameplay and stuff seemed like it was going to be kind of neat. So I don't know. This will stay on my radar. I might consider it. If you can't tell, I'm trying to go a little bit quicker here because I have to get this episode out tonight, hopefully. And I need to work on my other video too, so I'm trying not to spend too long on each individual thing. And also, I don't really need to talk about each individual thing too much. All right. There's a new Control game. So Control is obviously a very popular game. Came out in 2019. Published by 505 Games. Hugely popular. It's a game that I am definitely going to play at some point. It's on my Deku Deals as a game to play. And yeah, it seems really cool. I'll probably play it at some point. I will for sure, 100%. I will play it at some point. Could be next year. We'll see what happens. But the new Control game got announced, and so I know a lot of people have been talking about that. That was also one of the bigger games announced at the Game Awards. It's supposed to be coming out next year. So I'm curious to see what happens with that, but that definitely seems interesting. All right, the next announcement was probably one of my biggest, or my favorite announcements. That is Gang of Dragon. When this game was first shown, or when the trailer started, I was like immediately like, wait a minute, this looks like Yakuza, right? I'm like, is this a Yakuza like spin-off or some sort of tie-in or something? No, as it turns out, it is like a sort of a spiritual successor to the old Yakuza games, from the same director that originally directed the early games. Toshihiro Nagoshi. He left Sega back in 2021. He was bought off by, was it NetEase? I think it was NetEase. Basically, he went and was backed by them to go make his own studio. But yeah, they're one of the biggest Chinese video game companies, and I think he's kind of under their wing now, and I don't know, but whatever the case, he's out on his own, and now he's playing this, or he's not playing, but he's making this new game, Gang of Dragon, and it is a very much inspired by Yakuza. Obviously, it's made by the same dude, but it's very similar in its setting and all that stuff, and it definitely seems like a big thing. So I am actually really excited about this game. I'm probably going to play it when it comes out, or maybe not immediately when it comes out, but at some point after it comes out, because, yeah, it definitely seemed like it'd be right up my alley, obviously, being, basically another Yakuza game. It seemed really cool, and I'm very excited about it, so we'll see if we get any more details on that. I don't know that we will, but it's definitely cool. It's funny, though, I actually saw on the Game Awards YouTube channel, the Gang of Dragon trailer from the show was put up as a separate video, like all the other trailers were. Top comment on that video: a game directed by a Japanese developer, funded by a Chinese studio, starring a Korean actor with an English dub. So, there you go. I guess it's a blending of cultures, right? But yeah, I found that funny. But there you go. Gang of Dragon seems like a really cool game. I'm excited to play it. And I definitely will be playing. I don't know if I'll play it on day one. Probably not. We'll see. But we didn't get any sort of release window on this either. So, I don't know. He could have started making it as soon as he left in 2021, in which case I could see it being like a 2027 game or something. I mean, maybe next year, but I'm going to say probably 2027. But either way, whether it's 2027 or it's not for a couple years after that, I'll probably be playing it at some point. So, that's exciting for me. All right, there's a Street Fighter movie. That's really all I need to say. There wasn't really much else to say. They had the whole cast of the movie come out, and they were all, I don't know, being rambunctious. I don't know. I don't really care that much. I'm never gonna watch this movie. I mean, there were 2 Mortal Kombat movies now in recent years, and so it kind of makes sense that Street Fighter would also get a movie. But I really don't have pretty much anything to say about it. Best ongoing game, that went to No Man's Sky. Honestly, I expected it to go to Marvel Rivals. Obviously, that's been a pretty big game that a lot of people have played this year. I am not one of those people, but I definitely recognize its importance and place in the industry this year. And I was kind of rooting myself for Final Fantasy XIV. Final Fantasy XIV is not the kind of game that I think I would be into. I don't like MMOs, but obviously I'm a fan of the Final Fantasy series, or at least the old ones, and I know Final Fantasy XIV had a pretty big expansion this year as well, so I was kind of rooting for that, but I'm not upset about No Man's Sky either. It definitely seems like a higher quality thing than most of the other things that were nominated for that category, so I'm not upset about that for sure. There's a new Lego Batman game. We don't get too many Lego games anymore. Ever since they made Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga, all of the Lego games have gotten much higher in production quality, and they're taking a lot longer to make, and all of these different things. So it definitely seems like Lego games are taking longer and longer to make. But they did announce a new one. I mean, it looks pretty cool. I don't really play Lego games anymore. I would like to go back and play some of them again, but yeah, they seem neat. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a fan of Batman either, so I'm not really looking to play this, but it's pretty cool. It's going to be on Switch too as well. It's coming out next May. Again, I'm probably not going to play it, but seems cool. All right, best audio design went to Battlefield 6. I'm confused as to why. I don't know. Were the gunshots really that realistic? I don't know. Maybe some of you guys know something I don't. Best creator went to Moist Critical. He was the only one in that category that I actually knew the name of, and I still really don't know much about him. Best fighting game went to Fatal Fury, which is good because some of the nominees in there, they had the Mortal Kombat and the Street Fighter collections, and I was like, come on, man, we can't have a collection winning fighting game of the year. I know it's a rough year, but geez. Most anticipated game went to GTA 6. That's a given. Next. Rust is getting a mobile version. I'm not sure if it's the exact same game coming to mobile or if it's a new game that's exclusive to mobile. I don't really know. Obviously, Rust is a pretty well-known, well-loved game. I've never played it myself. I probably never will, but it definitely seems like something that a lot of people care about. All right, let's talk about Tomb Raider. So through the entire show, up until it was finally announced, they were teasing Tomb Raider just non-stop. Every time you turned around, they were like, "Oh, there's a new Tomb Raider. We'll talk about that later." I'm like, "All right, well, can we talk about it, or are we not going to talk about it? Like, what are we doing here?" And so, yes, indeed, there is a new Tomb Raider. There's actually two new Tomb Raiders, or kind of new Tomb Raiders. So first they talked about Tomb Raider Catalyst, and that is a totally new game with Lara Croft. You know, everything, we're back. It's classic Tomb Raider, I guess. I don't know. I've not played Tomb Raider myself. I want to at some point. This is a good excuse to make sure I do pretty soon. But yeah, so we got a new Tomb Raider game that's coming out in 2027. In 2026, we're getting Tomb Raider Legacy of Atlantis, which is a remake of, I think, the first game. I'm pretty sure it's the first game in the Tomb Raider series. So I don't know. I'm kind of mixed. I'm like, part of me wants to just go back and play the PS1, I guess the remastered version of the PS1 games, right? Tomb Raider 1, 2, and 3. But at the same time, it would be hard to pass up this brand new flashy remake. So I don't really know. It's another thing too. Like, I'm not entirely sure if they're gonna remake, Tomb Raider 2 and 3 as well. Like, is that gonna happen? Because if that's gonna happen, then this is obviously the best route to take to just play all three of them before the new one comes out. But if not, then it'll be like a Metroid Prime situation where the first one gets remade, a fourth game comes out, and then 2 and 3 are stranded. So I don't know. I'm a little worried about that. I'll have to kind of think about it more, but. Either way, I'm probably going to end up playing the Tomb Raider games at some point, either next year or maybe in 2027, because it definitely seems like something I'd like. I've liked what I've played so far of Uncharted, and Tomb Raider is obviously a very important franchise, and so I would definitely not want to not end up playing that. They announced Forest 3. Honestly, I had no idea there was such thing as a Forest 1 and 2. I had never heard of this series. It seems like a shooter. I don't really know. I mean, honestly, I don't have really much to say about Forest. It's a first-person shooter developed by End Night Games. That's all they've made. Is they made The Forest, they made Sons of the Forest, and now Forest 3. That's it. So not really much to say there. Invincible Versus, that is a comic book series from Image Comics. Invincible is, and this is the new fighting game related to Invincible, and they announced some new characters for that. I will probably never play this game. I've never read Invincible. I don't really plan to, and I'm not super into fighting games either, so this wasn't really an announcement for me, but obviously it's pretty important for some people out there. Best Action Adventure Game. So in past years, the Action Adventure category has usually been kind of a second place category for games. So generally, throughout the years, you'll see the Game of the Year award, I feel like most often comes down to like two games. And one of them wins Game of the Year, and then the second one that didn't win wins Action Adventure. Like for example, in 2023, right, obviously Baldur's Gate 3 and Tears of the Kingdom were the only two games that were possibly going to win Game of the Year. Baldur's Gate 3 won Game of the Year, so Tears of the Kingdom won Action Adventure Game. Is Tears of the Kingdom an Action Adventure game? Kind of. I wouldn't say that's its like primary category, but it's sort of an Action Adventure game. I guess you could kind of put it there. You can kind of put almost any game in the Action Adventure category if you try hard enough. And last year, in 2024, Astrobot did win Game of the Year, and it also won Action Adventure. So they kind of broke the mold there as far as historically where Action Adventure was kind of second place. This year, I'm not sure if this is second place or not, but the Action Adventure Award went to Hollow Knight Silksong, which I think actually does make a lot of sense this time. Obviously, Silksong had to win something. It was obviously a very important game that came out this year. If you told somebody, back in 2018 that Hollow Knight Silksong, or 2019, I should say, that Hollow Knight Silksong was going to come out and not win a category at the Game Awards, they would have been, furious, and so definitely seems like it should win something. and it has won something. So I hope the Silksong fans are happy. Obviously, I'm sure a lot of them probably would have liked for it to win Game of the Year, but at the very least, at least Silksong won something. And it won at least a more prestigious category than Donkey Kong Bonanza did. So if you're a Silksong fan, at least rest easy knowing that. Best art, art direction or whatever went to Clair Obscur. I know some people were upset about that because Clair Obscur is sort of a realistic style game. I feel like it's kind of on the edge. Like, I would call it stylized realism, which is definitely a cool way of doing art. I definitely like it. But yeah, I mean, I could definitely understand the argument for saying that, you know, something like Silksong should have won art instead. But obviously there was just a lot of support for Clair Obscur, and it won a lot of stuff. Best sim/strategy game. I figured they would give this a Civ 7, but instead it went to Final Fantasy: The Ivalice Chronicles, which is definitely where I wanted it to go. Final Fantasy Tactics makes a lot of sense to me. But yeah, I figured it would go to Civ, and I'm not sure if it was a recency bias thing because Civ came out so long ago at this point, like back in February, or if people really thought Final Fantasy was better than Civ. I'm not sure. But either way, I'm happy about it because yeah, Final Fantasy Tactics. I've not played it yet, but I'm definitely going to at some point next year. It's going to be my first real tactics experience. I guess Mario plus Rabbids, if you want to count that, but not played a lot of tactics stuff. I've played little bits of some of the Fire Emblem games, but not much of them. And so it'll be like my first full experience, I think, probably, unless I also play Fire Emblem next year with a tactics game. So I'm definitely excited about that. But anyways, it won Best Sim Strategy. Best Debut Indie also went to Clair Obscur. So at this point, you know, earlier on in the show, when Clair Obscur won a couple of things, I was like, oh, okay, they're giving Clair Obscur a couple bones here. But then, you know, Death Stranding 2 is going to win Game of the Year. Obviously, as many of you probably know, Clair Obscur ended up winning Game of the Year. So Clair Obscur just swept like all of the categories, as you can see here. And from all I've seen, it definitely seems like it deserves to as well. It seems like a fantastic game. They announced Anemo or Anemo, or I don't know how you say that, but this is basically a Palworld clone, which is itself a Pokemon clone. So it's like a second gen or second rate Pokemon clone, basically. I know I've probably just offended some people by calling Palworld a Pokemon clone, but that is literally what it is. You can't argue with me. So anyways, Anemo, I mean, you know, as far as a Pokemon clone goes, seems like fairly competent. We've seen it a couple times now. We saw it back at the Summer Games Fest, I think, for the first time. And yeah, I mean, not much has changed since then. It's a clone. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, you know, whether you like that reality or not, that's what the game is. It's a clone of Pokemon. Diablo 4 is getting a new expansion, a new story, whatever it is. I don't know. Diablo 4, that game just keeps on getting updates. They're supporting that thing to the end. It's crazy. It's respectable. I mean, it's cool, but yeah, it's crazy. That thing just does not end with its support. So good for the Diablo fans. When it was first getting announced, I actually thought it was a new Diablo game because I figured, you know, at this point, it's kind of been long enough that you almost could expect a Diablo 5 to be announced. But apparently not. No, it's like a it's still out there. It's still kicking. It's still gonna come out with new expansions, and that's cool. I'm happy for it. I played quite a bit of Diablo 4 at the very beginning of last year. Beginning of 2024, I played probably 15 hours or something after I first got the Xbox Series X, and it's definitely a fun time. I mean, I think Diablo 4 is cool. Diablo, it's not really my kind of thing. I guess my problem was it was really long, and I felt like you were kind of doing the same thing for a long time. So I kind of got away from it, and I didn't have a ton of motivation to actually beat it. So I intended to come back. I never did. I might still at some point, but probably not, honestly, at this point. So we'll see. I don't know. I could see myself at some point potentially returning, but it's not definitely not something I'm like really on the edge of my seat to do for sure. All right, we got some more info. I would say kind of our first real info about 007 First Light. That is the new, obviously, James Bond game, 007 game, whatever you want to call it. That is, you know, obviously something like GoldenEye, as far as video games go, was super important back in the day on the 64. This game is published by IO Interactive. They're the same people that made like the Hitman games. I guess, to be honest, IO Interactive, they're pretty important for a handful of things. Like, they're one of probably the bigger game development studios, like, in the industry. But yeah, I think it's mostly, honestly, for Hitman, I would say. But yeah, they're making a 007 game now as well. That's coming out next year in March. Seems like the first half of next year is going to be pretty loaded. I know there's already a bunch of people saying, oh my gosh, like everything's coming out next year. And yeah, it seems like there's going to be quite a few things. 007 First Light, it seems like it has a really cool art style. It's another one of those stylized realism things. It is coming out on the Switch 2. I'm definitely curious to see how it runs there. I might consider playing the game if it's going to come out on the Switch 2. I'd probably like to play GoldenEye first because I feel like it's almost blasphemy to not play GoldenEye and then jump into 007 First Light. But I'm kind of thinking about playing it on Switch 2 because it definitely seems somewhat interesting. So we'll see what happens. I'd like to kind of, play some more things on launch of like some of the bigger ticket, third-party stuff, so definitely one that I might consider. Best score and music went to Clair Obscur as well. Definitely Clair Obscur is deserving of that award because, yeah, it seems to have all I've heard of the score and the music, it seems incredible. Honestly, it's a very, very good music from that game. The Seven Deadly Sins Origins. Seven Deadly Sins, I guess, is some sort of anime or TV series or something, and this is some sort of RPG related to it. It's an open world RPG. That's cool. I don't know if it's any good as far as an RPG goes. I didn't really see a whole lot of gameplay in this trailer. It seems like it could also end up being another one of those sort of Genshin Impact kind of things. So I'm not super interested in this. It does not seem like the kind of thing I would be into, especially considering I've never, watched the show that this is based off. So not really on my radar, but that's cool. I'm happy for the people that are into this kind of thing. Lords of the Fallen 2. Now, the first Lords of the Fallen game came out way back in 2014, I want to say. Way back with the PS4 and Xbox One. I say way back, like that's ancient history. But either way, it's pretty long ago, to be fair. And then Lords of the Fallen, it was sort of, I guess it's a sequel. It's kind of it has the same name though, because there's a new Lords of the Fallen that came out in 2023. And Lords of the Fallen 2 is obviously a sequel to that second one that I mentioned. I think it's another kind of like almost like a Souls-like. It's an action game. I would say it is kind of Souls-y though. Not really my kind of thing, but it's a pretty big announcement. I definitely have heard a lot of people talk about Lords of the Fallen. It's a pretty popular thing. Best racing game. So this was kind of a big category for a lot of people, me included, because, Mario Kart World came out this year. A lot of people didn't like it. I kind of liked it, but I didn't like a lot of the open world stuff. But then Sonic Racing Cross Worlds came out, and some people were like really big on Sonic Racing Cross Worlds. I heard a lot of people say it was way better than Mario Kart World and all these things. And from all I could see, having not played Sonic Racing Cross Worlds, I did play the one of the test runs or whatever that they did for the public, but otherwise, having not played the game, it did not really seem like all that good. Like it seemed like honestly not that good of a racing game. But there were those crazy people out there that were like super into it, and I was like, all right, well, good for you guys. But that game ended up selling or like reviewing really well, and I think it sold pretty well too. And so I know a lot of people out there were like, oh my gosh, this is real competition for Mario Kart World, and it may be. But I know there were some people out there saying that Sonic Racing Cross Worlds was gonna, take the game award for Mario Kart World. I don't think that was ever gonna happen, and it did not happen. Of course, Mario Kart World did end up winning the racing category, but I'm sure there's some disgruntled Sonic Racing Cross Worlds fans out there. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like Kirby Air Riders could have at least gotten a nomination, but it did not. I mean, I don't think it should have won, but I think it should have at least got a nomination. Best VR AR game. Honestly, I'm not really in the VR AR space, so I don't really, hear about a lot of these games coming out. It's also they just don't have very good marketing. I don't think you don't see a ton of ads and stuff like that for VR games. I know there was that Deadpool game that came out this year. I was kind of rooting for that, to be honest, because it seemed pretty cool. But no, it went to the Midnight Walk, which is the only other one that I had heard about.
I've heard some people talk about it. You know, it's what it is. I know some people like it, but I really couldn't tell you much about it. Best RPG. I know you're probably all very surprised that went to Clair Obscur. Player's Voice. That is a totally fan voted category for Game of the Year. Basically, they had all of these games on there. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, all right, we got Clair Obscur, we got Dispatch, we got Genshin Impact, we got Hollow Knight Silksong, and then there was Wuthering Waves, and that's another one of those Genshin Impact kind of things. And I'm looking at this, I'm like, yeah, it's totally going to go to Clair Obscur, or maybe Hollow Knight. Like, everybody was talking about those games. I was like, you know what, maybe even Dispatch, because I know a lot of people like Dispatch, and went to Wuthering Waves, and I was like, what? How does that even work? And then it occurred to me, this category is voted on from everybody in the entire world. So it's people like in China because there's so many people in China that were voting for Wuthering Waves. Like, well, no wonder it won, right? Like, it makes sense now. But it's funny because I've never heard anybody really talk about Wuthering Waves. I did hear that it existed a while back. I heard, I saw some ad for it, and I was like, what is this? This is literally Genshin Impact. And yeah, I mean, it is basically. But yeah, it's another one of those games. It won because, non-Americans voted for it. So for me, I was like, wow, I didn't realize it was that popular, but it actually makes a lot of sense overseas. It would be. That's cool. I'm not upset about it. I mean, Clair Obscur won plenty of stuff. Believe me, I don't think it needed this extra award. So that, I mean, it is what it is. That's what happens when you open something up like that. And I mean, it doesn't really matter. I don't think it's that big a deal. Saros or whatever you want to call it. Another game coming out in April 2026. So far it seems like March, April, May of 2026 is going to be just like chaos. Like everything is coming out March, April, and May of 2026. Like, it is just absolutely ridiculous. This is a third-person action game. It's like a bullet hell roguelite shooter. I don't know. It's one of those things. It seemed kind of interesting based on the trailer. Like, the plot and stuff seemed somewhat interesting. I don't know. I don't think I was paying a ton of attention when this was first being announced, because honestly, I mean, it was just so freaking, it was just such a long trailer that I was just like, I don't even want to, like, deal with this, like, whatever. And so, I don't know, whatever. It doesn't really matter. They had Dan Houser out on stage to present some awards. Obviously, that's important because he's, like, one of the co-founders of Rockstar, obviously, so he's a pretty important face, and, when they said his name, I was like, oh, yeah, I know that guy. And then I was like, you know what, do I know what he looks like, though? And then he walked out on stage. I'm like, oh, yeah, that guy. Right? So he's definitely famous. Everybody knows him. He's definitely an important guy. Best Narrative. I know you're probably shocked, but once again, Clair Obscur won. Just another category. Clair Obscur really swept everything here. No Law. I think this is the game. I could be wrong. I think this is a game that we saw back at the Summer Games Fest, and it's now been kind of re-announced. This is another, like, sci-fi-y kind of. It's sort of sci-fi-y. It's also kind of modern era looking, so it's kind of hard to say. But anyways, it's kind of noir in a way too. It's like a really weird setting. But it's another shooter. It's by Neon Giant. They made The Ascent, I believe, which is another shooter. I mean, I don't know. I don't think it was like a crazy popular thing, but I've definitely seen it around a little bit here and there. So yeah, I mean, it seemed like a decently popular thing. Where Winds Meet. It's another action adventure thing by NetEase. I don't know. This is another thing that's just like so out of my realm of knowledge and care and stuff, honestly. I mean, it looked like basically Ghost of Yotei, but a year late. It's like, oh, well, we already had Ghost of Yotei. I don't know. It's just another one of those Japanese settings, RPGs, whatever. I mean, it's cool. It seems neat. I don't know. I won't play it. Phasmophobia coming to Switch 2. I know Phasmophobia was a huge game a couple of years ago, and so I imagine it'll do pretty well on Switch 2, and I probably won't play it, but I imagine it'll be a big gain for the Switch 2 as far as third-party support and stuff. Arc Raiders, which I had not really heard a ton about this year.
ironically, until the Game Awards. And now, since the Game Awards, I hear everybody talking about it again. And so I think I had heard the name a couple of times, wasn't super familiar with it, and now all of a sudden I'm hearing everybody talking about it. I'm guessing I just missed it before. I'm assuming it's not just like a sudden phenomenon. But anyways, it's a multiplayer shooter that won best multiplayer game. There's a new like Total War Warhammer 40,000 crossover. I really don't know anything about what I just said, but it was announced, so I was like, okay, cool, good for them. Like I don't know. Ace Combat. That's like that Bandai Namco plane game. It's like looks like it should be Microsoft Flight Simulator, but then it's like got story and it's like weird. I don't know, and it's like there's battles and dog fights and stuff, and so I don't know. Seems kind of interesting. Probably not something that I would play, but definitely interesting. Star Wars Galactic Racer. So this was basically a new Star Wars pod racer. So like way back in the day, they had the Star Wars Episode 1 pod racer. Came out in 1999. It came out back then on the 64, on PC, on Dreamcast. I think it was on the original PS1 as well. It came out on everything. And each version was kind of different, and there's been a bunch of different remakes over the years on modern consoles. I've seen just at Walmart just a few months ago, I saw a Switch version of the 64 one. And so, it's one of those things that I think a lot of people remember from back then, but I don't think it really was like groundbreaking at the time. But yeah, they're making basically a new one. I don't think it's by the same people or anything, but it's a new Star Wars racing game with pod racing. And so as far as I'm concerned, it's basically that game again, which was cool. Seems like a neat thing, and I was actually considering playing this. The problem is I don't play a lot of multiplayer stuff, so if Star Wars Galactic Racer ends up having a campaign or as like a single-player thing, then I'll probably play it at some point. But if it's just going to be online, then I'm probably not interested. Or at the very least, it's going to have to be on Switch too, because I don't even have the online service on PS5 and Xbox, so I probably won't play this one unless it has a campaign, which I'm not entirely confident that it would. Out of Worlds. This is another like It Takes Two. What's that one that came out this year? I actually forgot its name. The new Hazelight thing. Split Fiction. There we go. It's another one of those. It's another like co-op puzzle, cooperative thing. There's a lot of those. They seem pretty cool. The problem is I don't have any friends, so I don't have anybody to play these games with. But yeah, they all seem cool. And Out of Worlds, we saw it back at Summer Games Fest, and it seemed cool back then too. But yeah, it's just one of I'm probably never gonna play it because I don't have people to play it with, and I'm not really that worried about it. Duet Night Abyss. It's another. I don't know if it's another Genshin, but it's at least another weird anime thing. So I don't know what's up with this. It is just like another. It's just so out of my realm of knowledge and of care, and just like I don't even know what's going on with this. So we're gonna skip on that. Endfield One Republic song. So Endfield, or I should say Arknight's Endfield, is once again, you guessed it, it's another like Genshin. It's another one of those. It's another one. All right, we need to come up with a term. Is there like a term for those? I don't know. I'm gonna come up with those. I'm gonna call them China games. All right, so it's another China game. Endfield is another China game. One Republic was there. I don't think they were actually at the show. It was like a video that they played of One Republic doing a song for this China game. I don't know. I think it was interesting that they had such a crazy tie-in. Phantom Blade. So Phantom Blade obviously is something that they were teasing, kind of like Tomb Raider, really since the very start of the Direct. Phantom Blade is by S-Game. It's another, it's a Japanese setting. It's like an action game. I guess it's sort of an action RPG, I suppose. This one I would not call a Souls-like, but there's definitely some elements of that with like the bosses and stuff, it seems. Feels like a pretty cool game. It's going to be hugely popular when it comes out. I'm probably not going to play it, though. It doesn't really seem up my alley. But it's cool. It's one of those things that I remember hearing about a while back when it was supposedly going to come out. And so definitely a big announcement there, even though it's not really up my alley. Best game direction went to Claire Obscure once again. Who would have thought? Honestly, I figured game direction they would probably give to Split Fiction because it's another one, those Hazelight things. They like to give Hazelight a lot of props on direction and that kind of stuff. But no, I mean, Claire Obscure was apparently voted for and it won, and so good for Claire Obscure. All right, this is another one of my favorite announcements. I had a few this time, favorite announcements, but this is one of my favorites for sure. That is Mega Man Dual Overdrive. So that is the new 2D Mega Man game, the new game in the Mega Man series, and that game is coming out in 2027. So I think this is basically Mega Man 12. They're not calling it Mega Man 12, but I think that's basically what it is. Yeah, it's going to be for the 40th anniversary of Mega Man in 2027, which is really cool. That's a thing. And yeah, I mean, this game looks great. I definitely want to play all the Mega Man games. I don't know if I'll play them all in time for this game or not, but at the very least, I want to play them all. I probably want to play them all before this game. So if the game comes out before I've beat all 11, then that's fine. Like, I'm not too bothered. I'll just play the game later on. I don't need to be there day one for Mega Man, but at some point I want to play this game, and at some point I want to play all the other Mega Man games. So I've already started on that. I've started playing the first one, so we'll see how that lands me. They definitely seems like an interesting thing. But yeah, I was definitely really excited. They had the Game Awards, the orchestra, which is definitely, that's one of my favorite parts of the Game Awards as well, is the orchestra. They play obviously right before Game of the Year is announced. They play selections from each of the games that are there as nominees. And this show they played a few different times. They had a few different performances in there. All right, Neo 3. This is it's a Koei Tecmo game. It seems kind of like a Dynasty Warriors, Samurai Warriors, one of those kind of games, like a Musha, I think those are called. I don't know if this is actually technically a Musha or not, but it definitely seems kind of like that. So I'm not entirely sure. That could very well be part of what it is. I'm not entirely sure, but either way, it's another one of those Koei Tecmo kind of hack and slash games. All right, Solo Leveling Arise Overdrive. I don't know. This seems like a weird. It's another anime thing. It's based off another anime. I don't really know what this game is. It's not a China game, I can tell you that. But I guess it's another like character action hack and slash. It's one of those things. I don't know. It's cool, and I'm sure for anybody that is super into anime stuff, I'm sure it's probably pretty exciting. But I don't even know. I couldn't even tell you what this game is. Like I'm so lost when it comes to this kind of stuff. So that's cool. I don't know. Whatever. Moving on. We had High Guard was actually the last game announced, or at least talked about, at the Game Awards. So this is a game from. So Titanfall and Apex Legends obviously are both first-person shooters, made by Respawn, and this is a new one of those. It's a new Respawn game. It's their first game their first game like this since Apex Legends. It's an arena shooter, it's called. From the trailer, I mean, it actually seemed decently interesting as far as first-person shooters go. Like, it seemed kind of like a little different in some ways. It was kind of a weird trailer. So I was like, oh, that's kind of neat, I guess. I'm probably not going to play it, whatever. But this game has been getting beat up online. Like, nobody is happy about this High Guard trailer. I'm not even entirely sure why. I think it's probably a lot of people that are upset because they were expecting a Titanfall 3. And that's not what this game is. It's a new thing. I mean, it is what it is. I'm not going to defend the game. I'm not going to bash the game. I have absolutely no idea. But it's out of my realm. But there was definitely some controversy surrounding that. And yeah, there you go. I mean, like, I don't know what to tell you. So it did not really seem like a lot of people were super into that. And that's fine, I guess. But I guess, yeah, that's kind of where we'll leave off for that. So of course, before Game of the Year was announced, we had the Game Awards Orchestra. They played a song from each of the games. Obviously, I was kind of on the edge of my seat, like, all right, what are they going to do from Bonanza? I was kind of hoping that they would play Gangplank Galleon from Bonanza, because that was my favorite song, and Bonanza, obviously, it was originally in Donkey Kong Country. Was it in the first one, or was it originally in 2? I'm not entirely sure. But anyway, it was in the original Donkey Kong Country games.
and it's one of my favorite songs from back then. And it was in Bonanza, and it was a great remix, and like I was super excited. They did not play Gangplank Galleon. Honestly, I probably should have expected them to. They played Breaking Through. It was pretty weird though, because they had like one song obviously from every game that was nominated for Game of the Year, but then randomly at the very end they had Bonanza and they had a singer for Breaking Through. And so the funny thing was is like they only played like 15 seconds of Breaking Through. So you've got this like 2-minute performance, and then all of a sudden, all right, we got 15 seconds with a singer. She just like pops in out of nowhere, sings for 15 seconds, and she's done. It was really weird. I don't know, whatever. So there you go. But there we go. I was definitely happy to hear that little bit from Donkey Kong Bonanza, just some acknowledgement that the game actually exists, because the vast majority of people that are like go to this thing or announce things at this thing, like they just don't care about Nintendo stuff, and obviously I do, and so I was definitely happy to hear about that, because truly I think Bonanza is probably the best game that came out this year, rivaled only by Clair Obscur. And Clair Obscur also, a lot of people seem to think was the best game that came out this year because it won Game of the Year. So there you go. Like I've said a few times on the show before, I fully expected Death Stranding 2 to win Game of the Year. It seems like the kind of game, critically that would do well and win that category. And, I hadn't heard that many people talking about it, but I kind of figured that's kind of what would happen, because, generally a lot of the Game of the Year winners are a little bit out of my circle, because I'm not super into a lot of that stuff. And so that's kind of what I was expecting. And it turns out I was totally dead wrong. And instead, Clair Obscur won. And it's not like totally shocking, especially after I started watching the show and I witnessed the Clair Obscur energy. I was like, oh shoot, okay, Clair Obscur is going to win this thing. But yeah, before I started watching the show, I did not at all expect Clair Obscur would win, and turns out it did. So I'm definitely happy. I'm satisfied with the Clair Obscur winning, and I'm as satisfied with the show just in general. Every year, the Game Awards show gets higher and higher in production quality. It gets better and better. There's so many shows and live performances and things like that. And yes, it goes on too long in some ways. There's length. There's some game announcements that I don't care about. But every year, they do a better and better job. And I've got to hand it to Keighley. He does a good job with the show. I mean, like, honestly, the Game Awards are a truly special show. I'm really excited and super thrilled to watch the show every year. And I'm happy that this year I got to live stream it as well and react to it here on YouTube. So I'm already excited for the Game Awards next year, and we still have an entire year to go before we get there. So I'll be there. So I hope you guys will be there with me. But yeah, I think that's probably going to do it for my review and my analysis and recap of the Game Awards. Honestly, I expected to probably spend a little bit more time, and I easily could have, but I figure now is probably a pretty good time to cut things off. This is a long enough episode to begin with. Like I said, awesome year for the Game Awards. I think I probably liked last year maybe a little better. I don't know. I was really satisfied with Astrobot winning. Like, honestly, Astrobot won last year, and I literally got out of my chair, and I was, like, jumping around. I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. 3D platformers are back, like, this is amazing. Like, I was ecstatic, elated about Astrobot winning last year. And so, Clair Obscur did not have quite the same effect on me because I've not played it. I guess I hadn't played Astrobot either, but, it's RPGs are like the next thing down, right? You got platformers are like my main category. RPGs are probably my second favorite, as far as broad categories. So I was definitely happy about Clair Obscur. Maybe not quite as much so, though, about Clair Obscur as I was Astrobot. But either way, definitely a satisfying show for every other reason as well. I do wish Bonanza had won more than just Family Game, obviously. But hey, I mean, Nintendo did pick up 2 wins with the Family category and with the Sports Racing category for Mario Kart World. So I can't be too mad, I guess. At least they won something. It is kind of unfortunate, though, that in the launch year of a console, they couldn't have a bigger presence at the Game Awards. But that's just how it is, I mean, it's unfortunate. But all right, that's going to do it for me. I will see you all next week on, let's see, the 23rd will be the next episode. I am still planning to put out my end-of-year ranking video for all the games I played in 2025. Hopefully, I can get that out this week on the 19th, on Friday. If for whatever reason I can't, then I guess it'll have to go out
either on the 23rd. 23rd. I don't know. It'll either go out on Friday, the next Friday after the 19th or the 26th, or maybe, I guess, the 24th. That's not really a great day, is it? So we'll see what happens on that. I'm hoping that we can just get that out earlier, but I guess also it's definitely possible as well that if I can't get that out, then it'll go out the very last Wednesday of the year as well as possible. So we'll see what happens. I'm not going to say any further on that. That will come out before the end of the year for sure. When exactly it'll happen, I don't know yet, but hopefully this Friday is my plan, as long as I can get that done. So wish me luck on that. That's going to do it for me, and I'll see you all for one more episode this year, and then it'll be 2026. So we've just got one more episode. That'll be episode 37, right? This was 36. That's going to be all for me. See you all next week. Goodbye.